Hey guys, welcome to a special breaking news edition of Triggered. It's great to be with you here this afternoon. We're going live with FBI Director Kash Patel in just seconds, following the announcement of an arrest in the January 6th pipe bombing case. We are going to bring you the latest. You guys know we've covered this story extensively for the past several years. We've shown you footage. We've analyzed the story from every angle, while the Biden FBI basically tried to make it all disappear, which always felt a little odd. I mean, you have pipe bombs in front of the RNC and the DNC. It feels like that's a bigger story than anything that could have possibly happened on January 6th. And the sham January 6th committee that barely even acknowledged the pipe bomb, which were placed, again, at the RNC and the DNC headquarters. That sounds like a real threat to democracy. The arrest was made in Northern Virginia earlier this morning. The suspect has been identified as 30-year-old Brian Cole of Woodridge, Virginia. He's been charged under 18 U.S.C. 844, which is use of an explosive device. And more details are developing in real time. So we're just going to get going and get right into it. This is a big deal. Obviously, Kash is really busy with all of this going on right now. We were actually scheduled to talk to him today just about the general stuff going on. This happened. It changed it. I guess it's better to be lucky than good. So joining me now, FBI Director Kash Patel. How are you, Kash?
Hey, Don, it's great to be here. I'm sitting here in the White House. I just left the Justice Department to make this really momentous announcement for accountability here and to show the world what this FBI can do.
Well, I love hearing that. It's a big deal. I've talked about this bombing for a while. I know we were going to talk about basically everything else that was going on today. This just worked out. So this was the first interview, I guess, since the press conference. Yeah. But Kash, let's just get right into it, because I know you're obviously scrambling a little bit right now also with everything going on. What can you tell us about the timeline of this investigation and what led to this arrest, and how you conducted this in a much smarter, more serious way than the previous leadership at the FBI?
Yeah, let me try to take that in reverse. So, Don, as you know, the weaponization of law enforcement is not just based on offensive operations like Arctic Frost and Russiagate, which we're also working on, but also on the defensive posture of silence. And in this instance, the prior administration had the same exact information that this FBI had access to and chose not to put the resources on target to go out and find this individual, as you said, who wanted to blow up Americans at both the RNC and DNC at the United States Capitol, at the heart of our democracy. Why they didn't want to do that is a question for them, but it was an intentional failure. When Deputy Director Bongino and I got here, we said, this is a case of high priority, because this individual threatened so many American lives and disrupted and caused so much chaos. So what we did was, we went back to good old-fashioned cop work. We said, let's reevaluate every single piece of evidence. Don, 3 million lines of evidence were reviewed by the FBI agents and the interagency during this 6-month, 7-month process here. We brought in experts from around the country, and we also said, hey, we've got capabilities that weren't applied before for whatever reason. And Deputy Director Bongino spearheaded this mission and said, we're going to apply them all. We are not going to leave any single line of evidence unturned. And what happened is what happens in any good casework, where cops are doing what they're supposed to be doing and FBI agents are doing what they're supposed to be doing. We found the evidence. We executed search warrants along the way, hit legal process, developed leads, went out and had suspects that we thought were part of it and weren't part of it, as we always do in investigations, and came to this position we are here at today, where this individual, who is now alleged to be responsible for the pipe bomber, has been definitively shown to be the individual under the charging position of the Department of Justice.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen that sort of silence about things they don't want to talk about. I know we've spoken about this since January 6th, 2020. But, I never understood how this could just disappear. I mean, 2 pipe bombs targeting the headquarters of the Republican Party, targeting the headquarters of the Democrat Party. I can understand maybe the media ignoring targets on the Republicans because, again, their silence is golden and they only report on that. But I mean, that to me is a far greater threat than any of the nonsense, a grandma taking a selfie inside of January 6th, and yet it just disappeared. It's almost like that was the backup plan if they didn't get what they wanted out of January 6th, which to me seems like a very clear setup operation.
And look, you're absolutely right. Thanks to President Trump's sweeping victory and mandate for accountability across all sectors of law enforcement, especially those that harm Washington, D.C. and our elected leadership and American lives visiting our nation's capital, we just went at it with the same approach that we go after every single case this FBI handles. No resource will be spared. No agent or analyst or staff support will be spared. These guys worked literally around the clock for the last 6, 7, 8 months producing these lines of evidence, finding the leads. And you now know, based on the publication of the press conference, that yes, there were tips in there clues in there that we keyed in on, like the sneakers, like the height, like the appearance. And we refined those images. And we also used our brilliant Kash system. And what that is our cell phone analytic capability to go back and say, who was in the area? And also, why wasn't this discovered before? It's not like we recreated the cell phone data from 5 years ago. People just sat on it. And that's your point. They decided not to do anything. We took the opposite approach. And look where we are today. We arrested the January 6th pipe bomber.
So what else do we know about the suspect, Kash? I mean, and there were some other, false reports a few weeks ago identifying someone else. Did those reports have any impact on the timing of this arrest?
Zero. We don't base our reporting, our investigations, and our arrest based on timelines of baseless reporting. We present the evidence with our partners at the Department of Justice for prosecution when we meet the evidentiary threshold that was necessary. And that's what we did here. And I got to remind the audience here, remember, this individual was 25, Don, at the time that he placed the pipe bombs. That's a young person. And we have to go out there and map not just his network, but we also have to go out there on days like today, when we hit the house and we hit his place of work. We have to go out there and carefully make sure that those houses and buildings are safeguarded so that our workers and our bomb techs and our evidence response team can go in there and collect the necessary evidence for the prosecution that the U.S. Attorney's Office needs. So we're developing more and more the suspects in custody. We've spoken to them. Of course, I can't get into the information that's being provided as a result of the search warrant of those conversations. We'll make those present in the judicial process, but we're confident in our ability of executing for the American people.
So, obviously there's been a lot of noise surrounding the case. The Biden FBI didn't seem to even want to find the guy at all. I mean, they certainly didn't talk about it. Neither did the media. Can you talk about how you approached the investigation, again, compared to the predecessors?
It's really simple. We said, hey, let's let good cops be cops. We got video, let's enhance it. We have cell phone data that wasn't triaged properly. Let's triage it. We have the technology and the capability to do it. And let's go back and work with the investigative team and ask them where the pitfalls were, where the black holes were, where was the road bumps in terms of legal process, and why didn't you execute all these search warrants? And I don't just mean search warrants of houses. We're talking about search warrants to service providers, cell phone companies, online providers, and anything tangentially related to this investigation. And the U.S. Attorney's Office and Department of Justice gave us those search warrants to produce the results necessary for us to put the pieces together to say, not only was this individual there, but he was the one responsible for creating, building, and placing the pipe bomb. That's equally important to an investigation of this magnitude. And that just takes time. But I want to remind everybody, they took 4 years off. We put 8 months hard work into this. And that is a tremendously fast investigation for something of this magnitude and public importance. But some of this work just takes a little time. And those that want to hasten and put targets on people so they can have clickbait, that's their right to do so. But that is not the mission of this FBI. That's not how we operate.
Yeah, and I imagine, even still, it's still got to be harder 4 years after the fact. I mean, if you're starting, at moment one, it's going to be, a lot easier than 4 years later because, just things get harder to follow. I've spoken about him on the show a lot, sort of, a lot of, I don't even want to call them conspiracy theories because some of it seemed, quite valid in talking with people about it, the sort of resolution of the video, the speed of the videos, outside like the RNC or the DNC being incredibly slow, relative to, modern day video camera footage. It was like, they said, this is like from the 1970s. Can you talk about that? And do you think some of that could have been by design, from people not wanting to get to an answer here?
You know, I wasn't there in the past. All I can say was what we did and what they chose not to do. And what they chose not to do was execute services, search warrants, and legal process. What they chose not to do was properly triage the cell phone data. Again, Don, the key piece here is we didn't come up with a new piece of information that didn't exist 5 years ago. We can't go back in time. We simply allowed agents to unleash their capabilities and expertise across the entire FBI and said, we are going to get an answer. We are going to get accountability because this individual tried to blow up lives. It is a simple posture of the Trump administration that in order to have accountability, you have to leave everything on the field. And that's what this FBI did. And that's what this Washington field office did. And that's what we're doing on every single case, by the way, that we have. And that's what we're doing to de-weaponize the FBI and depoliticize the Department of Justice. We are going on offense on every single matter. And we're especially going on offense on the matters that the prior administration sat on defense in.
So, there's been some, uncertainty, certainly online. So I don't know what's real and what's not. Sometimes it's a little hard to follow. But on when these devices were actually planted, does this arrest crystallize the timeline at all in terms of, the sequence of events that's sort of been, up in the air again, especially online?
It absolutely does. And I don't want to get ahead of the Department of Justice, but you're going to see a crystal clear timeline and picture in the next 24 hours when this individual makes his presentment and first appearance in court and we proceed with the paperwork to his arraignment. That's where key pieces of information are going to be made public for the first time, because that's where key pieces of information legally must be made public for the first time. And we're not going to disrupt that process because that would hurt the integrity of the investigation. And most importantly, it would hurt the integrity of the prosecution that's upcoming.
Well, no, that's a big deal. As someone that was there that day, I certainly don't want to. This person has to be held accountable, and there has to be justice. But I think that's the general sentiment across so many people. Will there ever be a look back on the way, perhaps your predecessors or other people in the FBI handle this to question those methods and motives? Again, the fact that it disappeared, from the news basically the second, January 6th happened and was never brought back up again, even in the months following. It seems odd, and I mean, it seems like something that people would want answers to. Will there be a review process on how this was conducted differently? How you guys could do this, 4 years later, and in 8 or 9 months, actually come up with a suspect versus the prior administration having 4 years, a more immediate timeline, being able to go right into it, having the immediacy of that, or even the fact that they just didn't care. Doesn't that say so much about the weaponization of justice in America today?
Absolutely. And I think you're going to see it on parallel tracks. What you're going to see is as this case presents itself in court, you're going to see where we were able to collect the evidence and make the case against this suspect. And then common sense journalism and investigators are going to be able to look at it and say, why didn't these people do X, Y, and Z 4 or 5 years ago? That's going to make itself self-apparent. But what we're doing at this FBI is also, we have replaced this entire leadership cadre. We have pushed out 1,000 agents into the field. There's a reason this FBI has 25,000 violent offenders arrested this year alone. That's twice as many as last year. There's a reason that this FBI is going to deliver President Trump the lowest murder rate in modern history by double digits. There is a reason this FBI is out there crushing fentanyl, destroying narco traffickers, and making sure the homeland is safe and preventing spies from infiltrating our homeland and our way of life. That's what happens when you change leadership from the prior administration FBI, who wanted to weaponize and politicize law enforcement, to us, President Trump and the Attorney General, who want to just deliver law enforcement on every single front. And that's what we're doing. So you're going to see it in both lanes.
Yeah, for the last few years, I've been talking, like, all I want for Christmas is an FBI that does, like, I don't know, FBI stuff. It seems like you're doing that. You mentioned sort of the general, things that are improving. Can you get into those stats specifically? Because I started seeing some of these numbers online, and it's actually incredible. I mean, it's really important for people to understand that you guys are actually making a difference these times, rather than, doing some of the, more woke nonsense the FBI seemed to be partaking in for the 4 years of the Biden administration.
Well, the pipe bomb case is emblematic of what happened during the prior 4 years of the Biden administration. They let it lay because they preferred to go after senators unlawfully. They preferred to go after President Trump unlawfully. They put all their resources and leadership cadre into those weaponization efforts. We immediately shut that off and jettisoned all those individuals. And what happens is these numbers of arrest. And the reason that there's so many violent offenders in America is because the Biden administration went on defense and sat in silence. And the only places they were on offense was for the weaponization of law enforcement. We have 4 top 10 captures on the FBI's most wanted list this year alone. That equals the number of the entirety of the Biden administration. That means 4 of the worst criminal animals on planet Earth were captured by Donald Trump's FBI in 9 months. On top of that, we have seized enough fentanyl, 100 to kill 127 million Americans. That's up 23%. Our work on violent crimes against children is historic. We have found, identified, and discovered 6,000 children this year alone. That's up 30%. We have dismantled human trafficking organizations looking to enslave our children. That is up 14%. And we have also, this may be one of the most proud stats when it comes to protecting our youth, especially online, nihilistic violent extremist networks like 764, preying and mutilating children and causing them to commit suicide online and things like animal crushing. Our arrest in that category is up 590%. These numbers are because the mission of this FBI is simply to get after people who are looking to destroy our way of life, harm our children, and destroy our youth. And the fact that President Trump came in and gave me one mandate: get out there and deliver accountability for the American people and make sure our neighborhoods are safe. These are just some of the numbers we're talking about. The murder rate, lowest ever in modern history, and the most violent offender arrests by 110%. I mean, people have to take a pause at those numbers. Those statistics don't just happen if we did one case. We are doing tens of thousands of cases across the country and around the world. Our espionage arrests, Don, those that from Iran, Russia, China, and elsewhere looking to spy on us, we've arrested 40% more spies in the United States. We're also taking on agro-terrorists who are importing seeds into this country and funguses and pretending to be researchers at places like the University of Michigan and looking to steal our agricultural seed so that they can supplant that and go overseas and take it away from us. We are on a full-scale mission to protect the American public, and we're going to finish this December strong. We've already operated Operation Summer Heat to historic results, safeguarding cities like Memphis, which was an FBI-led effort to get out there and absolutely crush violent crime. And we're never going to stop defending the homeland. So these statistics, Don, while we can rattle them off, that is 9 months of putting foot to ass and crushing it for the American public.
By the way, it's actually a really big deal. And I sort of do this for a living at this point, and I didn't know half of those things. I think there's definitely things that, people want, action on, especially the online, cadres, and I get that. But I think, just honestly, in hearing that right now, because God knows I'm one of those people for a lot of these things, but in hearing all of those things and not knowing about it, that's actually amazing. Like, I think we all probably have to do a better job of highlighting some of those things, because that's, ultra critical for Americans. That doesn't mean we stop wanting some of those other things, but I think we can't let some of the noise of all of that essentially discredit that work. Because like I said, I do this every day. I follow it intimately. And I literally only knew of about half of the things you just rattled off. And those are actually really big statistics. So, well done.
Well, lesson learned. I got to come back on your show and do it more often.
Well, honestly, I think we just got to get that out there, on a lot of the messaging. I mean, listen, there's people, and hey, it's really germane to me. Obviously, the shooting of my father. People want to know information about that, and I think you'll do a great job with that. At time, you have some of the stuff around J6. This is the big one, obviously, but those other stats on a day-to-day basis are such a huge deal. And again, I don't know that anyone actually knows about it. So I think we collectively have to highlight those things, because it's easy to sort of say, well, I want this, this, and this, but not know that that's actually going on. And again, I do it for a living, and I'm shocked that I didn't know it. And so, for those who get frustrated online, I think, I may get it, but I think you also have to give credit where credit is due on those other things, because those stats, not just the numbers, but the improvement in the percentages relative to your predecessors is a really big deal.
No, absolutely. And that doesn't mean we're taking our eye off the ball. Look, you're talking to the guy who was a chief investigator for Russiagate, the ultimate weaponization of our law enforcement in the United States history.
Oh, I know a little bit about
it. Yeah, and you know a little bit about it, and I do too. And we were talking to the guy. Look, we're the ones that uncovered Arctic frost. In terms of transparency, this FBI has produced 40,000 pages of documents to Congress in 9 to 10 months alone. Let's put that in perspective. My predecessor, Ray, produced 13,000 pages in 7 years, and Comey produced 3,000 pages in 3.5 years. We're committed to transparency, but we're also committed to these investigations. We have ongoing investigations, as you know, of Russiagate and Arctic frost. And yes, we did indict folks like James Comey and Letitia James. And I know they're going through the legal challenges. But notice one thing that's not happening in those cases. Nobody in there's challenging the substance of the work. They're trying to throw it out on some procedural error. And I don't believe they're going to be successful. We're not done with those cases. Our partners at the Department of Justice are not standing down and bending the knee. you're going to see, in my opinion, more investigative work continue to lead to more prosecutions, because in order to end the weaponization of justice, there has to be full accountability, not just with transparency, but also with people being held to justice in a court of law. And we're going to continue to do that. Look, they built this disease temple over the course of decades. Yeah. And in 10 months, we've already taken a sledgehammer to it. But that doesn't mean we're done. And that doesn't mean we're not doing the work. It just takes a little bit of time to unravel the deep state that they built here, and we're doing it. And the Jan 6 pipe bomber is a piece of it, you're right. But it's not all of it. But I want the American public to know, we keep speaking in court when we can. We're going to continue to show up to court, and we're going to continue to make people like Comey and Brennan and Clapper and Page and Strzok and so many others answer for what I believe are their acts of criminal conduct, because that's exactly what they did when they weaponized law enforcement, went overseas, borrowed information from some hack in England about Russia, infiltrated our FISA court, lied to a federal officer, and illegally surveilled your father during a presidential candidacy. You think I'm going to let that go?
Yeah. Well, and senators and congressmen, only Republicans in Arctic frost. I mean, that's a really big deal. Again, the media is never going to talk about it, but I mean, talk about a threat to democracy. Can you talk generally about the process of conducting investigations? Again, whether it be the pipe bomb or Arctic frost or any of these others that are, all crazy. All of this does take time, especially when, there's documents literally being found in burn bags in random places hidden inside the FBI headquarters. I mean, how shocking is it to know that, under Comey Ray, there seemed to be a deliberate effort to hide the truth. I mean, that's clear as day to me.
It was an arrogance. These people thought that we would never look or find these materials because they had it set for destruction or they put it away in some vault. Remember the Arctic frost case, where they also targeted not just senators, but staffers, including myself, when I was done being a staffer. And on the campaign trail for President Trump, they decided, hey, let's go target him. Remember, they put my name in the search warrant, the bogus search warrant for Mar-a-Lago. Nobody else's name, mine, in that WhatsApp search warrant that the judge signed literally over WhatsApp to unlawfully raid your father's house in South Florida. We are the ones uncovering those documents. We delivered them to Congress. We want to work with the American people. This is a dual track that no FBI has ever taken. Everybody just said, wait. We could do that and not turn over anything. But we are going to turn over as much as we can without jeopardizing the investigation. That's exactly what we did in the pipe bomber case. We provided what we could to Congress in a timely fashion. And now look at the moment where we have arrived today, an actual arrest, which is what every American wanted. And that's the balance that I have to strike for this FBI. And I get it. We get some heat for it in the online spaces, and that's okay. But look at the results, not just this result, but the historic results of the first year of the Trump presidency for the FBI. They are literally the best numbers the FBI has ever put up. And that's because we're moving agents out into the field by the thousands. We're giving ourselves a new headquarters building. We're saving the taxpayer $4 billion. We're giving the men and women of the FBI a workforce that they can believe in and restoring public trust. And remember, when I inherited this FBI, their public trust rating was less than 40%. That's like congressional levels. We've got a lot of work to do to restore it, and putting out documents is one way, but putting out these arrest numbers and conviction numbers, in my opinion, is the best way. And we're only 9 to 10 months into my tenure, and we're going to keep going.
Yeah, no, that's a big deal, and I get it. As someone who rages online a lot, it's not easy to undo 4 years of subversion. 4 years of hiding the files, making things go away, disappearing that trail. We in the online world in which we all lived, prior to getting back into government. It's easy to want that instant gratification. It feels great when you get it occasionally, but the reality is, especially to do this right, especially in a weaponized, lawfare state where you can actually have everything right, but a procedural error can throw it all out. You're not going to get everything that you want overnight. These things take time, and I think we all rather have the appropriate result than a hastened answer that then gets thrown out, not because of the merits, but because of procedure.
Exactly. And that's what we're doing. And that's what I think we showed the world today with the Jan 6 case. And as I said, stay tuned on matters like Comey and Letitia James. We're not done. We're continuing to fight that with our Department of Justice partners. And the substance of those materials have been made very public in a court of law. Look what we disclosed in the Comey case. So this is a perfect example. The burn bags were found by us months ago, but we weren't allowed to disclose them to the public fully because we wanted to protect the integrity of the investigation. We found the documents. And because Comey and his team pled against us in a court of law, we were able to turn the documents over to the public. The documents aren't contested. The evidence is there for everyone to see. That's the best way, in my opinion, to conduct accountability. And we're not going to let them off the hook on procedural errors. We're going to keep going. This investigation on Russiagate and the weaponization of government continues to be ongoing. We have built two massive teams that have been on it for about 6 to 8 months. And it takes about that much time just to serve legal process. Just think of it. Search warrants take months for service providers to give us the returns, for private sector companies to give us the banking records. That stuff takes time because that's just the way it is. I wish I could speed it up. And the way we are speeding it up is by putting more manpower on it.
In all of the major investigations you're working on, there's these sort of, these bad actors, including many foreign accounts who are trying to push conspiracy theories. We've seen it with the assassination of, Charlie Kirk, ever since sort of Twitter opened up like the place where these guys are actually posting from. And again, some of that may be through a VPN, but I imagine a majority of it isn't. How does that impact your work? How much of that, is a distraction, just, from a law enforcement perspective, but, also for the public at large, because I think it creates perhaps unrealistic expectations in terms of timing, speed, results, et cetera.
Well, the Charlie case is obviously a tragic example of our friend being assassinated.
Yeah.
And us working with state authorities, similarly like in the Jan 6 case, but there with the state prosecutors, to make sure that that individual is brought to justice. And we have to balance freedom of speech. We are not going to trample on people's freedom of speech, right, in the digital media, in the TV media, or in the online spaces. But when they create a lot of undue noise and undue conspiracies, what that does is it causes us to come off mission and respond to those conspiracy theories because they get so loud. And what happens is we only have so many people and so many hours in the day. Yeah. And I'd rather put them all on Charlie Kirk's case and all on these cases that we're talking about rather than diffusing some of these conspiracies, but that's the job. And we're balancing as best as we can, but we're never going to trample on people's freedom of speech rights. That's one of the main things that your father was elected for, was his protection of First Amendment freedom of speech. So we could take the criticism, we'll just speak in a court of law.
Yeah, no, listen, I think that's important. I'm sort of a free speech absolutist on that. And, frankly, I've been, pretty conspiratorial over the last, let's call it decade, and rightfully so. That doesn't mean that everyone is accurate, but, I wanted to see how much harder that makes the job in getting to a result, or perhaps, opening the door, for someone who's actually guilty to get away because of, a sentiment that was created and, whatever it may be. And I'm just sort of curious about that balance because, God knows, I want the person who actually killed Charlie to face justice more than anyone. He was someone I spoke to probably more than anyone over the last decade. And so, it's just a curious question because there's so much going on. It's just, frankly, it's hard to follow.
It is, and it does take a lot of time and a lot of bandwidth. And this FBI, I can only speak to them, is trying to answer every single one of those questions that we possibly can without jeopardizing ongoing investigations. That's the balance. That's the job that I agreed to take on for President Trump. And I knew it wasn't going to be easy. And same with Deputy Director Dan Bongino. And we publicized more information than any FBI in the history has done before, not just with congressional documents, but look at what the amount of information we put out online through interviews, through televised interviews, through these types of interviews and great podcasts and shows like yours. But we are committed to continuing to put out as much information as we can, but we will always side on the side of protecting the integrity of investigation so we can get to the position we are today with individuals like the pipe bomber.
Kash, I also wanted to ask, because sort of we touched on it earlier, as it relates to public safety, which is such a big deal for so many Americans. We also see, the Trump administration and yourself taking bold and decisive steps to dismantle the drug cartels and the narco-terrorist criminal syndicate like the Maduro regime. Can you talk about the FBI's role in all of that? Because right now I think the focus is obviously on the military, but I know that the FBI has a pretty big stake in all of this.
It's massive, and the designation of these drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations allows us to treat them like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and that's what we're doing in places like Mexico and Colombia and elsewhere. And we have huge teams out there conducting these seizures, these record seizures, not just of fentanyl, cocaine, meth, and other narcotics that are killing our children and our young Americans. And that's what this FBI is all about. Record level results in terms of not just seizures, but dismantling these drug networks. Some of the largest victories we've had this year have been arresting drug kingpins and shutting down human trafficking and drug networks, because that's how they pour these, unfortunately, these children and these narcotics into our communities, and the FBI is leading the charge. I know I'd rather go on and chat with you, but I'm being hailed over to run back across the street, Don.
No,
So
I totally understand. Appreciate. We'll have to have you back on to talk about all the other stuff we were originally going to talk about, but this is a really big deal. So, Kash Patel, FBI director, just want to thank you for being on here and the work that you're doing. Get it done right. Let's make sure we get some justice. I think that's what we all want in the end. So really appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks so much for your support, and thanks for having me on your show. We'll be back soon.
Be well. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to check out our great sponsors. This one, again, was sort of last minute. We were supposed to go on like a little while. It just sort of got jumbled, but how do you say no to that interview? Really big deal to be able to get the first interview of the FBI director after the arrest of the suspect in the January 6th pipe bombing case. So make sure to check out our great sponsors. Diversify your portfolio with the Birch Gold Group. Text Don Jr., DONJR, to the number 989898. Remember to like, to share, to subscribe. Okay, that's a really big deal. The media went to sleep on this case. We've been talking about it probably every couple of months since I went on the air in 2020. That's a big deal. We have to remember that. So this is the kind of news that no one's been talking about. We're able to do this because we've made it a priority. We're willing to talk about it. So like, share, subscribe. Get it to your friends. Check us out on Apple and Spotify podcasts. If you missed the show here, or if your friends get their podcast that way, that's a big deal. Download the Rumble app on your smart TV so you can watch this on the big screen with your family. I'll say like 99% of the time I behave, and you won't get yourself into too much trouble with the kids. So thank you very much, guys, and I'll talk to you all again very soon. But before you go, like, share, subscribe. Be good. Don't forget about the Birch Gold Group, where you can diversify your savings and protect your future. The Trump administration is moving fast to right all of the left's wrongs. But with all the damage we've seen the Democrats do, it's always smart to be prepared. And that's why thousands of Americans are buying gold now from the Birch Gold Group. Here are the facts. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 30%. And Birch Gold makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Or you can even buy some gold to store in your home safe. Just text my name, Don Jr., DONJR, to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, only useful information. It's about learning more and educating yourself. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of protecting your savings today. Again, text my name, Don Jr., DONJR, to the number 989898.